Hello students, once again we will discuss the summary of Virtue Rewarded, the subtitle of Pamela, written by Samuel Richardson. What is this? In a very short way, I am going to tell you the summary of this. As you know that the female protagonist of the story is Pamela Andrews. She comes from very good family, religious family. Her father had been a school teacher, and mother is very genuine, very good lady, both of them. But due to some circumstances, father has to leave the job, and then he has started working in a field. But Pamela is a very virtuous, very good girl and beautiful girl, just of 15 years old. So as novel opens, then novel opens in Bedfordshire, right? And Bedfordshire and Lincolnshire, both the places are in the novel. Places are near are situated in London, and the the Mr. B is a very rich person, and he is the he is the owner of two estates which are in Bedfordshire and Lincolnshire. Now, as novel opens, we meet Lady B. Lady B is a mother of two children, Mr. B and Lady Davis. Mr. B is 20 years and Lady Davis, why? Because she is married daughter. So son and daughter of Lady B. So when novel opens, we find that Lady B is on bed, and she tells her son that no one should be, no, like all servants should be continued, especially Pamela, because she helped me a lot. She is very genuine. She needs safe job, and uh, she took care of me, and that is why she should be continued. So now Mr. B, he agrees, and after Lady B, he takes charge of home, and he says all the servants that they should be continued. But he has special interest in Pamela. So he wants to take advantage of Pamela, and in the beginning he is normal with Pamela, but after some time he changed his attitude, and he tries to take advantage of Pamela. So he speaks whatever in his mind, and verbally he tries to seduce Pamela, and then many a time he kisses Pamela. Pamela gets hurt always, and she writes everything to her parents. Actually, when Lady B dies, then Pamela sends 5 guineas to parents, because she supports family, and that's why she is working here. But then when Mr. B takes advantage of her, so she gets hurt, and she discusses this issue with the Mrs. Jarvis. She's a housekeeper in Bedfordshire. So she takes care of Pamela, and as she discusses this matter with Mrs. Jarvis, so she's just like mother. of Pamela. She likes Pamela. Pamela likes Mrs. Jarvis. But as Mr. Andrews comes to know, he gets annoyed. But poor Pamela could not do anything. She avoids, she ignores all the things in the beginning. But one day, Mr. B hides himself in an almirah, and then when she was changing her clothes, so he was in the cupboard, and this is the height. Then she decides to leave her parents. She writes each and everything to parents, because this is the epistolary novel where story moves with the letters, plot moves with the letters. So she writes, and parents, as mother is Pamela's mother. Mother is very religious lady, Elizabeth. Sorry, Elizabeth Andrews, right? And this is John Andrews. So that's Elizabeth is very simple and very genuine kind of lady. So she does not speak, could not speak much. But then father suggests Pamela to leave and just come. Whatever the situation, we will cope up, but don't compromise. And she always um tries uh, to take care of her virginity, and she says that this is height, and now I have to leave to my parents. So one day she leaves the home, but she was attacked by a bull. So she gets scared and she comes back, and then she shares with Mr. Pamela that I have to go, and she's stubborn this time. She says I cannot not continue in this way. So finally, Mr. B has to take decision, and he says that okay, but Mr. B tells to Pamela's parents. He writes that uh, your daughter is interested for Mr. Uh, Mr. Williams, and Mr. Williams is a curator, and your daughter is uh, she like she shows her interest for Mr. Williams. However, Mr. Williams, however, Pamela is not at all interested for anyone. So then Mr. B writes to Pamela's father that uh, for her safety, I am going to send Pamela to Lincolnshire, another state of Mr. B. There she will work, she will continue. But to Pamela, Mr. B says that you will be sent to your parents, and but instead of reaching parents, Pamela is left to Lincolnshire. She is sent to Lincolnshire, and in Lincolnshire, Mrs. Jucas, another housekeeper, she is in Lincolnshire. She works in Lincolnshire. She is just opposite character of Mrs. Jarvis. Mrs. Jarvis is very kind, and Mrs. Jucas is very cruel. So Mrs. Jarvis, the Mrs. Jucas, as she reaches and she's confined, she's captivated in Lincolnshire. So that day when Mrs. Jucas tells to Pamela that you're supposed to sleep with me, because she understands that Mr. B is interested in Pamela. So she helps this way. She helps Mr. B, and then onwards, day one, Pamela has to sleep with Mrs. Jucas. Then again, one day, Mr. B comes to Lincolnshire, and one day when she was sleeping, and then she feels that she is not sleeping beside Mrs. Jucas, but she is sleeping with Mr. B. Then She could not resist herself, and she finally decides to leave. One thing I forgot to tell you in between what happened, that her letters are not being delivered to parents because of Mrs. Jukas and Mr. B, because Mrs. Jukas, she collects the letter. What happened? This is an understanding between Mr. Williams and Pamela, that she leaves letter in a tree, and from where Mr. Williams collects the letter and he drops to parents. But then one day, Mrs. Jukas collects the letter from the tree, and then she reads in front of Mr. B. Now Mr. B gets annoyed like anything, and but when he sleeps with Pamela in place of Mrs. Jukas, then Pamela is also very much annoyed, and she decides to finally to leave the job. So then she requests Mr. B that whatever the condition now situation, I am not going to continue. Finally Mr. B has to agree, and he permits. So as she goes uh, and she leaves, she is on the way, she receives one letter from Mr. B, in which Mr. B uh, apologize apologizes for this, and he says that I'm very sorry, and so she thinks that, and I'm ready to get married with you. But she supposes, because she is predicted by one astrologer that very soon uh, you will be tortured, or that you will be victimized by someone. The person will use you. So she thinks that Mr. B is not at all interested for marriage. He just wants to take advantage of my physical advantage from me, and she denies. She says that no question of marriage. But then another letter she receives from Mr. B on the way, when she is on the way, on the way to her parent, in which she finds that Mr. B is not fine. Then she decides that I have to go to Mr. B, and then first time she realizes that she is in love with Mr. B. She feels she has some feelings for Mr. B. So she comes back and she takes care of Mr. B. But this time Mr. B is very kind to Pamela, and he religiously finally takes decision that I'm going to get married with Pamela. So very beautifully Pamela replies that why don't you clean the chapel, means she shows her consent, and this way they get married, but not with many people. Limited people are there, and then in their presence she get married. But as Lady Davos, uh, Lady Davos is the mm, Lady Davos is the sister of Mr. B. She comes to know, and she starts misbehaving with Pamela, because she thinks that my maid servant cannot be accepted as a sister-in-law. And even in the town, in the both the Lincolnshire and Bedfordshire, people do lot of gossiping, and finally she thinks that she has to but she is very quiet, Pamela. She does not react in any way. Now she is the owner of both the estates. But then first of all, she do lot of charity to many people, and she helps them, those helped her in her bedtime, or when she was needed help. So many people helped her, and that's why this is the time now she's ready to help to all. And this way she helped many. Now, uh, now what happened that mm, uh, one day, after as they get married, and immediately she comes to know, because Lady Davis tell to Pamela that, you know, that you don't know my brother, and he has one illegitimate uh, daughter, and she is in hostel, and her mother Sally got Friday has already left, and she has got married. So she lives, Mr. Goodwin lives alone, and she is a illegitimate daughter of my brother, Mr. D. But Pamela takes it very, very like friendly, and very normally she takes, and she thinks that now Mr. B is my husband, and no problem. I am going to accept Miss Goodwin as a daughter. And this way, one after the another, Pamela shows virtues, and then she shows that, yes, I I don't have any problem, and her virtues come in front of all, like in both the cities and elite class, and they were surprised, like the maid servant, but she's virtuous. And this is the contradiction that Mr. B comes from elite family, but he does not behave like Pamela. Pamela is very religious, kind hearted, very good girl. And then uh, society uh, which was not ready to accept Pamela as a daughter-in-law, but now they all accept Pamela, and this way Pamela uh, becomes an apple of eye of everyone. And at last, editor says that Pamela is blessed to have 5 6 children and leading a very good life. So here novel ends. So I think you must have got the story, and if you have any confusion, you are most welcome to talk to me. Right? Thank you. Bye. God bless you.